Welcome back. Let's now use the array that we created last time in the last video and basically assign one of the values, a random one of those values, to be the word to find. So our word that we want to find. Which now means, of course, that our game controller needs not only to use the time field, but it also needs to manipulate this word to find text. And you might recall how to do that. So please go ahead and at least create the variable for it inside of our script so that we can then assign our word to find text. So this one here at the top. So please go ahead and pause the video and try to create that variable. All right, I hope you did that and you paused the video. So basically we will need to do the same thing we did here, but this time it will be the word to find, and I'm going to call it field. Okay, so the word to find field, you could have called it word to find text or something like that. That would have been fine as well. It's just important that you're using the camel case that we're using here, as well as are making sure that you have a name that is descriptive. So at least it describes what we are talking about. So this will be the new line of code. Let's also directly make sure that we assign the text inside of our game, because otherwise we might forget it later on. And this happens to me while developing games quite often already, where I'm just starting the game and then I'm wondering, oh, why doesn't it work? Well, that's because I didn't assign a particular value to my script. So here, let's select the word to find text. So here, words to find field should get the word to find text. And now inside of our script, we can actually use it. But what we want to do is we want to basically make sure that we get one of those words here from the words local and assign it to be the word that will be displayed in word to find. But we want to hide it. So on one hand, we're going to store whatever was selected, and then we're also going to store the hidden word. So first of all, we have the chosen word. So what was the word that was chosen? And then we will have the hidden word. So the word that we are hiding behind it. They will be more or less the same, but they will serve different purposes, which is why we will use them. Okay, so let's say we want to assign to our chosen word a value. Well, we can do it like this, right? So we could assign something like butter here, for example. But of course, instead of assigning butter, we want to actually assign a random word out of the ones that we have here. So how can we do that? Well, let's say we do it like this. We access the words local and then we say, okay, give me the random one out of those. So random one, of course, doesn't exist. But what it does exist is a method that will give us a random value out of the ones that we have. And therefore, let's look at the presentation real quick. And by presentation, I mean a slide. Well, basically, it's just an image. But we're using the random action or a random class, so to speak. So there's this class random, and we're using its range method. And we're going to get a value between 0 and, in this case, 10. So between a minimum and a maximum. And this is basically the range that we're using. So we have seen that and we have used that in our last project, but I just wanted to emphasize on that once again, because we can do the same thing now in order to select a random index, which is exactly what we want. So now please pause the video and try to implement a random.range call here. Basically, we're calling the random.range method and pass values where you think that they would make sense. Okay, so I hope you paused the video. So we're going to use the random class once again. It's inside of Unity Engine, and we're going to use the range method. And here we need to pass two values, the minimum as well as the maximum. And the minimum should be 0, and the maximum, let's say, would be 4, because 4 is exclusive, which means the fourth value is going to be excluded. Why that is important is because if we entered 5 here, for example, in some cases our application would crash. So if the 4 would be included, we would have index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, and there is no index 4. So if we are trying to access index 4, our program will crash. Let me actually show you that this is the case. So let me actually select the fourth value, which doesn't exist. Let me save the script real quick and let's run this in Unity. Okay, so once the script is loaded, let's run it in the start method. This is always a good moment to check something. You can see index out of range exception. And I mentioned this word in the last video really quickly, but I didn't show you. So in this video, we can see index was outside the bounds of the array. So whenever you get this error, you know that you are accessing an item of your array that does not exist. So that means that your array isn't that big, or it doesn't have as many items as the index that you are trying to access. So in our case, we only have 4 items and we're trying to access index 4. Well, 4 wouldn't be a problem if we had 5 items, because the index counts from 0. So it starts at 0, which is why we get this error. Okay, so let's fix this real quick and let's go back to our code. So we want to use random range, and here setting it to 4 is fine because, as I stated, it says the max is exclusive. So the 4 is not going to be part of it. The 3 will still be part of it. So it will give us a value between 0 and 3. Now that by itself is fine, but let's actually do something a little more programmy, so a little more advanced, because this is okay because we know exactly how many items we have here. But let's say we don't know how many items we have in an array, and we still would like to get the maximum item count that we have inside of this array. Then there is this property that any array has that we can use called length. Okay, so let me show you using the debug log, like so. And I'm going to say amount of items inside of words local is, and then the item length. And this is something we can get by using words local dot, and you can see here there is this length property. And what that will do is it will return the amount of items that are inside of this array called words local. And now let's save this and let's go back to our Unity. And let's run the program, or the game in our case. And you see amount of items inside of words local is 4. All right, perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to know. So that we know that there are 4 items. So how does this help us with our range problem here? Well, the cool thing is we can just use this here instead. So we can, instead of using the 4, we can just use words local length. Because what that will now do is, no matter how many items we enter in here, it will just give us a random one out of those items that we have in our array. So if I were to add Dennis in here as well, so let's say I add Dennis now, and I save this, then words local.length will now be 5, which means that this will now give me a random item out of 5 items. So out of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So out of the 5 first indexes, so to speak. Index starts at 0, as we know, and that's what this random range will give us. So now it will give me any of those 5 items. And you can even save the script and check it out in Unity once again to see how many items you now have, and you will see that it will now say 5 items. So words local is 5. So now we don't yet assign a text to our word to find field for now, but we're going to see how to do that correctly later on. Now, of course, we can go ahead and just say, okay, at the beginning of the game, we're going to assign word to find field, and we're assigning its text the chosen word, like so. Okay, so this will now give us the chosen word randomly out of those items. So let's save this real quick and go back to Unity and run the game. And you will see that each time we run it, so I ran it real quickly, it was Matt. So let me run it again. You see it's Dennis. Okay, let me run it again. It says Robert, and then let's run it again. Now it could be Robert or Dennis again. You see Robert once again. So that randomly was the case because we just have 5 values, right? So now it's Mary Jane and so forth. So now the value that will be selected, or the text, the name that will be selected for our Hangman game, will be randomized. That's exactly what we wanted to achieve. But now, of course, we want to hide it and make it a little more advanced, so to speak. So see you in the next video.